What's up guys, my name is Ace, and one thing that was added with the Season 3 update in Modern Warfare 2 that's brand new to this game at least, is the addition of a night map, and a proper night map where you basically need to use night vision goggles in order to see what's going on, at least in most areas of the map. Now with this, anytime you're using the NVGs, you're essentially forced to use lasers, which can really easily give away your position. So in today's video, I wanted to share a bunch of tips for helping you reduce your visibility and just general tips for playing on NVG maps. So starting it off, if you're using a gun with no attachments and you have your night vision goggles on, you won't be showing a laser when hip firing. However, the moment you aim down sights, a laser will appear, and it also works like a canted laser, so you won't be able to look down your iron sights, or if you have a low zoom optic, you won't be able to look through that optic. And this default laser is quite bright and easy for anybody to see. And the first big thing I wanted to take a look at is, what if you use a different laser attachment on your gun? What does this do to your laser's visibility? Does it change the color? Does it change the brightness? Does it change when the laser appears? Well, let's just dive right into it. And the first thing I'll point out is, if you use any one of the laser attachments in the game, even if it's not stated in the menus, that laser will always be on and always be visible. So even those lasers that normally only appear when you aim down sights, they will now also appear when hip firing on the NVG maps. And on top of that, the lasers that normally don't have a visible laser beam, but you can just see the dot, so like the 1 milliwatt PEC laser for instance, now this laser beam will be at least slightly visible to players that are using night vision goggles. And again, this is going to be applying whether you're hip firing or aiming down sight, just like with all of the other lasers. Now, if we look at a third-person view of this, that laser beam isn't super visible. It's actually a lot more hidden than the default laser if you don't use an attachment, and it just gives you that automatic laser. So that is something that you may want to take advantage of. For the lower visibility lasers that in the menus have no stated downside of having the laser visible, while they are visible in the night vision modes, they're a lot less visible than any of the other lasers, including the default one that you get when you don't run a laser at all. Now, having said that, for any of the other lasers that do have a stated con in the menus of having that laser visible, whether that visibility is while hip firing or aiming down sight, keep in mind, in this mode, that applies all the time, and these lasers are going to be very visible. So this includes things like the OLEV style lasers, or the canted laser for instance, or like the FTAC Grimline, which is the one that helps us the most with our hip fire spread. For all of these lasers with that stated downside, keep in mind they are going to be very bright and they are always going to appear. However, one little thing I wanted to point out here as well, and this does apply to the regular game, some people have asked me about this. If you have a laser that's normally visible while hip firing, that laser will turn off when you sprint. So anytime you're sprinting, that laser is just off completely. It's not going to be like up in the sky or anything. And that's something that's definitely nice to know. But another thing I wanted to mention in the laser category of attachments are the flashlights. And the flashlights work pretty interestingly here. It turns out when you try to aim down sight with these, you still have that canted view. You won't be able to look down your iron sight. However, you'll notice that there is no laser whatsoever, not even that default laser when aiming down sight. And at longer ranges, this could potentially be good for being a little bit less visible to your enemies. However, up close and personal, you will be projecting this cone out of your gun that's really bright and really hard to miss. And then to top that off, you don't get the laser to help you find where the center of your screen is exactly. So you may run into some troubles there, but this is one way to completely eliminate the laser on your gun. So there we go, that covers it for the laser attachments in these NVG modes. Now let's move on to optics, because these are very important as well. Like I've been saying, if you just use the iron sight, or if you use any one of the lower zoom optics, you will end up with this canted view. You won't be able to actually look down your optic while the NVGs are on. Now, if you take your NVGs off, you can aim down sight just fine, but again, your visibility is going to suck, at least in a lot of areas of the map. But as we go up in the zoom level, once we get to the VLK4 optic, this is where you can actually start aiming down sight while still using your NVGs, as we can see here. Now, when you aim down sight, you will still be projecting a laser for enemy players to see, but now you can at least use your optic and you're not stuck with that canted view, which a lot of people don't really like. Additionally, I wanted to point out, if you use one of the higher zoom thermal optics, it looks like you're not projecting any laser. At least from a first-person perspective, there's no visible laser here whatsoever, so you might be thinking this is another workaround, but unfortunately, in third person, you are still projecting a laser here, so definitely keep that in mind. Even though it might look like you don't have a laser with these thermal optics, you definitely do, and I tested every single one of them. Now, the next really interesting thing to point out with the optics is if you use a toggleable optic, you can actually use those low zoom optics while fully aiming down sight without that canted view. So basically, if you choose one of these optics, you just toggle to the lower zoom option, and there you go. You now have a low zoom optic that you can fully aim down sight with. However, for all of the ones that toggle to a holographic optic, you will be able to see a lot of the imperfection on the glass, and therefore you won't have the clearest vision looking through those. So I wouldn't recommend any of these that will toggle to a holographic, but for all of the others, they're nice and clear, very easy to see. And out of all of them, my preferred one is the SZ Oscar 9. This one just seems to give the cleanest view without obstructing a bunch of the center of your screen, and you get that nice low zoom optic there. This would definitely be a go-to optic for an NVG map for me. And then one final thing to point out with optics in the NVG modes, this is scope glint, or lack thereof. There is no scope glint in this mode, so if you do use a sniper optic, for instance, sure, you're going to be projecting a laser, but they won't be seeing a massive scope glint from you, which obviously makes sense since there's no light to reflect off that scope, although some of the other night maps that aren't NVG maps, you will still see really bright scope glint, which doesn't make much sense, but I just wanted to point this out for you guys. Now finally, I just wanted to mention something people have been telling me about, and that is that underbarrel launchers or shotguns will prevent a laser from appearing in these night modes. And perhaps that was true when they first launched this, but I did do some testing with this, and no, underbarrels don't seem to have any impact on your laser behavior at all. And with that, that pretty much wraps it up for the night mode specific tips that I've got for you guys in Modern Warfare 2. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the night mode and the fact that it came with Season 3 of Modern Warfare 2. Keep in mind, all the gameplay from here is going to be against bots, just because I didn't have any gameplay saved up on this map, and there isn't like a 24/7 playlist, so I couldn't just guarantee finding this map. So I just went ahead and played it against bots for you guys. But when it comes to this map specifically, Black Gold, I actually really like the layout and design of this map. And I wish we would have also got a daytime version of this, because I think it would be great to play this with regular mechanics. And that brings me to my general thoughts on adding this map in rotation as the only night map, and it's in regular rotation with the other maps. Just like I suspected I would feel when we first heard about this, I'm personally not a fan of mixing these NVG maps in rotation with all of the other maps in the game, simply because it's a very different gameplay experience. It seems like you're playing a completely different game mode. And while I think it's neat to have NVG maps and modes, I also feel like they're a little bit gimmicky and I don't want to see them in regular rotation. Ideally, I would have loved to see them take a few of the existing maps in the game, create night versions of those maps, and even if it's just like 4 or 5 maps in total, they could put that in its own playlist. And for those that like this NVG style, they can go to that playlist and they can play NVG all day, every day if they want to. And that could keep them out of the regular rotation for the people that don't really want to deal with that when they're just searching for regular quick play games. Now, of course, that is just my opinion of this. It's not that I completely hate the idea of having these night maps or night modes. I'm just personally not a huge fan of playing them, and I'd rather not see them pop up in regular rotation with all of the other maps in regular modes. And this is where I'd love to hear your opinion in the comment section down below. First up, what do you guys think about the tips that I shared regarding the lasers as well as the optics in this game? And second, how do you feel about them adding a night map and just adding it into regular rotation in regular game modes? Do you like the fact that they did this, or would you have preferred if they kept it separate and perhaps created a few more night maps with the existing maps that we have in the game? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.